What ancient creation stories teach us today about the chaos and the ego and the narcissism that's happening right now in the world, and how you can get back to peace and spirit. Listen, all great traditions have asked the same question. How did we get here? Where did creation begin? Today, I want to look at the stories from Judaism, Christianity, and the Hermetica, and then see how they resonate with some other religions like Taoism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Not to prove one right and others wrong, but to see how each points to the same mystery of the source. When we step back, we see that in the first and second centuries after Jesus' birth, these ideas were closer than we think. The world was alive with questions about origins, specifically in Egypt, the Roman Empire, and Greece. Judaism was telling the story of Genesis. Early Christianity was weaving the Gospel of John. Greek philosophers were teaching about the Logos, which means word or divine reason. And Hermetic writers were sharing visions of Nous, the divine God, and the Ogdoad, which is the eighth realm of spirit beyond the physical heavens. Meanwhile, in the East, the Vedas, the ancient Indian scriptures, the Tao Te Ching, and the teachings of the Buddha carried their own vision of how the one becomes the many and how the many return to the one. Even before the time of Christ, Jewish thinkers were already dialoguing with the Greek gods' philosophy. In Alexandria, the first Greek city in Egypt, still overwhelmed and overcome by the Romans, which were keeping Egypt in their grip because of the grain that they needed, the first Jewish scholars translated the Hebrew scriptures into Greek in what became known as the Septuagint. In that translation, we begin to hear the language of divine wisdom in ways that sound remarkably like the words of Jesus that would come later. Especially familiar was words like Yahweh and Logos. The wisdom of Solomon, for example, written in this period, describes wisdom as a breath of the power of God, a pure emanation of the glory of the Almighty. Doesn't that sound like John's prologue, where Christ as Logos, the Word, is described as both with God and being God? The seeds of Logos theology were already present, echoing across Jewish and Greek thought, preparing the soil for the early Christians. In the Judaic Genesis, God speaks and creation unfolds. Let there be light. And order emerges from the chaos, from the darkness over the waters. Humanity is created in the image of God, placed in a garden, and given stewardship. Early Christians inherited this vision, this thought, but the Gospel of John adds something profound. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here, creation is not only by divine speech, but through the living Logos, later revealed in Christ. This was already present in the Greek scriptures. The Hermetica offers another picture. In an ancient book dating back to that same Christian time called Palmandrist, or the Divine Mind, or Nous, speaks this: and out of darkness comes light. From God comes Logos, the ordering principle of the cosmos. And then it speaks of how from that cosmos was created an angelic realm, which mirrors the Greek gods, because they all were planets, Venus and Saturn and Mars. This made it easier for humanity to understand. I'll quote this: humanity born of this union carries both a divine spark and a material ego body. The Hermetic path describes two movements: involution, meaning spirit descending into matter, and evolution, meaning the soul's return or ascent back to spirit. Here we also see the polarities at work: chaos and peace, ego and spiritual connection to God. The human ego becomes both a stumbling block and a bridge. It can hold us bound in fear and division, or when surrendered, it can serve as the vessel through which spirit shines. Our purpose is to awaken to our true nature and ascend through the spheres, returning to the source. The Hermetic vision is less parable and more a map of consciousness, showing not just how the world began, but how the soul journeys through involution and evolution back to its divine home. For some reason, this gives my soul more harmony because the story has a divine ending, back to love, back to God. Now, Revelation has a lot of chaos in it, and it leads us back to that 1,000 year of peace. But it really doesn't tell us about the return to the one creator God. I need that ending. I need to know where we're heading. And these aren't isolated voices in religion. Taoism teaches that the Tao gave birth to one, the one gave birth to two, the two gave birth to three, and from three came the 10,000 things, or the many things. Hinduism says Brahman breathes out the cosmos, often through the sound of Om. Buddhism reminds us that everything arises in interdependence, each thing leaning on another, a chain of becoming with no fixed beginning. And the Apostle Paul, lastly, speaking in Athens, even quoted a Greek poet when he said of God, "In him we live and move and have our being." That existed, those words existed before Jesus. That's almost indistinguishable from the Hermetic vision of the divine mind in whom we exist. In each of these traditions, we hear the same rhythm: light out of darkness, the word, the logos, where the sound is creative force, the one becoming the many, humanity caught between heaven and earth, called, though, to return. And just as important as the stories themselves is the time in which they were told. The first and second centuries were full of chaos. Rome and Egypt, Judea and Greece, under Rome's rule, wars raged. Leaders were corrupt, narcissistic, and hungry for power. Religion was fractured. Yet, in the midst of this upheaval, seekers found their way inward. They listened for the voice of Nous, God, the whisper of the Logos, Jesus, the movement of the Tao, the darkness, the creative feminine. They discovered that creation was not only something that happened long ago, it was happening in them in every moment they turned toward the source. Doesn't that sound familiar? We too live in an age, in a world of chaos and wars, of narcissistic rulers, and the constant threat of world war. Our world feels fractured, but the invitation is the same as it was then: to hear the small voice, the voice of spirit in silence. The truth is, creation's not finished. The same word that spoke in Genesis, the same logos that's shown in John's Gospel, the same nous of the Hermetica, the same Tao and Om and interdependent arising. This same creative force is breathing through us now. So when I ask, how did we get here? I realize the deeper question is, what creation story is Spirit writing through you today? Each of us is a chapter in that same story. Each of us is both the chaos and the light. Each of us is being invited to remember the unity that all traditions point toward: the one source, the Father good, the divine mystery of creation. This is why in my own book, Zeroing Out, I often use the words involution and evolution to describe the same journey. Spirit descends into matter, into the ego, so that matter might evolve back into spirit. Your ego, your frailty of humanity is important to the rhythm of creation, the rhythm of awakening, and the rhythm still unfolding in you and me right now.